Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network and Steelers YouTube channel. Chris Halicke here. To my right, Greg Macafee. To my left, Matt Williamson. What's going on, fellas?
How's it going?
It's Friday. It's Friday.
It is Friday, but it's, we're still 3 days away. I would say 3 days, right? Yeah, 3 days away from I can't even do basic addition when it comes to days anymore. 3 days away. So, obviously, typical game Sunday, but this one, Monday Night Football, Steelers, Giants, New York team, prime time. That's exciting. So this will be a little bit of a different episode because we're still doing this on, Friday evening. So we won't have the final injury report when we start talking about the matchup with the Giants. But we can still dive plenty into this matchup. I think we know, a good amount about both teams, and we can still talk about it. So, but before we get into that, we definitely want to look back at what the Steelers did last week. They improved 5-2 with a pretty impressive win over the Jets, 37-15 final score. Back-to-back weeks that they have scored more than 30 points, over 400 yards of offense. Russell Wilson got the job done and got stronger as the game went on. So I'll kick it to you guys really quick just to see what was the overall impression of what you got from the game, what they did well, what they need to do better. But obviously when you win by 22 points, you probably are doing a lot of good things. Greg, I'll kick it to you first. What did you like about the game?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that stood out to me was Beanie Bishop. I mean, he can't really be ignored with the the two interceptions and the way he bounced back after how he performed against Dak Prescott 2 weeks before. I kind of went back and looked at the tape earlier this week, and I rewatched his first interception. And it's funny, as he's dropping back into coverage, he's got his back to Aaron Rodgers, and as Aaron Rodgers finds his receiver, he kind of turns and contorts his body to make the catch. And it was just a really good play. And so I guess his play was, the one thing that stood out to me. And then I really liked how the offense kind of progressed through kind of struggles early on, and they were able to kind of, stay even keel and pick up momentum as the game went on. And I think that's kind of a huge credit to Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith to kind of be able to work through the early struggles and find some rhythm late and put up 30 points on the scoreboard.
Matt, what did you like about the game? I'm sure Russ's performance is probably needs to be highlighted, but is there anything else that really kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly the low-hanging fruit to talk about, and Najee, the way Najee's run the last couple of weeks too, I think is at least has to be mentioned. The tackling and Wilson in general, I thought started quite slow and problematic, and then did a 180. Completely changed itself. He throws the ball with better touch and accuracy than Fields. That's clear. The play action stuff was a lot better. Red zone stuff was a lot better. A lot of things we talked about a week ago that we were hoping for changes, but maybe more than anything, it's just the procedural issues, making adjustments at the line of scrimmage, getting out of bad plays, don't running into stacked boxes, knowing where to go with the football. He was under a lot of pressure early, but knew where it was coming from and showed that he can still move around a little bit. Like his arm strength, I didn't think was great, but that also could be some rust stuff. And people that have watched him in practice don't think that, including myself, don't think that he's hurting for arm strength.
No, I didn't. I didn't get that impression at all. As a matter of fact, when he came out as rusty as he was, I was a little surprised because he didn't look that way in practice. He definitely looked way more sharp. He threw the ball with plenty of velocity, and then when he wanted to add touch to it, he added plenty of touch. And I was definitely surprised when it came to like seeing, and not just like missed throws, but some really, really bad misses. Those back-to-back throws. I think it was they had three and outs right in a row, and I think on that third one, that definitely drew the largest amount of and loudest boos from the crowd. I mean, those were some bad misses, especially the one on second down where they were running that little what's called SRO, where you have the option to to either hand the ball off or throw it to that bubble screen, and it looked clunky. The throw was bad, but yeah, I don't want to keep going on after the low hanging fruit, but I thought Russ and the way he played really kind of showed, I think, what this offense is capable of, especially when they are also running the football. Matt, I know you've been harping on it with the Scouts Eye podcasts. I wrote about it this week. The second half just continues to be an area in which this team is just dominating. I mean, they are second in the NFL in points per game in the second half, and it's only 0.2 of a point behind the Baltimore Ravens, and I think the Ravens have far and away the best offense in the NFL. So to be even in the same ballpark as them in any kind of form or fashion, to me, is impressive. And just kind of goes to show, okay, well, where is the ceiling for this offense? Is this something that they can actually sustain for 4 quarters? Because if it is, I think the trajectory of this season changes completely.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, I mean, second half stuff, they're plus 68 in point differential just in the in the second half. I mean, that's ludicrous type stuff, and I think that there's a couple reasons for it. And some people are probably like, well, why don't they do that to start the game? Like, good point. I mean, I get that. I don't have a great defense for you, but it sure looks like they're making some good halftime adjustments, and I think that they're also wearing teams down with their physicality on both sides of the ball and exploiting some depth. You know, like this Giants defense we'll talk about does not have a lot of depth. You know, I mean, I think that could be a rough fourth quarter for them. But yeah, I mean, we've been saying for years that, let's just say, which I think this is not crazy talk. I mean, when I do a mailbag on my podcast, someone asked, you know, is it crazy to think that they're going to have a top 5 special teams unit? No. Is it crazy to think they're going to have a top 5 defense? No. If they could get to the 15th best offense, are they a contender? I could write that story, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that. Greg, is there anything else that like that really stood out to you? Like, you know, we mentioned the run game, and I look at Najee, but I also look at Jalen, the way he ran the ball as well. I mean, because it looked like he had a bit of his burst back. Because remember, this is an offense that is still built on, you know, as a run first team.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great guy to get back into the offense. I mean, it's something that we've been waiting for kind of all season long. I mean, even when he returned, I think against the Chargers, he didn't seem like he had that full burst still, and even as he's returned, it didn't seem like he had it. But you know, this game was one where he seemed like he was back to being Jaylen Warren. I mean, we all know that he's probably one of the toughest guys on the team. If you put him into a pass block situation, he's going to take on anyone that comes into the backfield, and that shows with his toughness. And you know, he's definitely a crucial guy to have in the backfield to kind of complement Najee. I think they complement each other perfectly. It just adds to the running game, and this offense is kind of built around that early on. And so, you know, if one that gets as strong as they can get, this offense could be clicking moving forward.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and then we're going to, you know, jump into this matchup with the Giants because, shoot, man, like, I understand the Giants are not a good football team. They're probably one of the worst teams in the NFL, and maybe only give the Raiders a run for their money in terms of the worst team that the Steelers are going to face this year. But still, it's an opportunity to go to 6-2 by the bye week. I had them, first, you know, beginning of the season, I had them 5-3. By the bye week, and so 6-2 would put them in a really good spot where they could pretty much go 4-5 the rest of the way and finish 10-7. I mean, you're talking about setting yourself up really, really well. So we'll take a break, and you know, when we come back, we'll jump into this matchup because, again, another game that they should win. But you know, this is the NFL. You never know what's going to happen, and we'll kind of dive into that stuff right after this.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Steelers, Giants, Monday Night Football. Excited about it. It's the only Monday night game of the year, and I'm so glad that a bye week follows the only Monday night game of the year. It just makes everything easier for our jobs and everything. So let's dive into this. Greg, I'll kick it to you first. What is
Cam Hayward's body appreciates it too.
Oh,
you know, they have a little bit tougher job than us, believe it or not.
Shit, man. As a matter of fact, let's bring up Cam Hayward because I believe it's his 202nd game that he's going to be playing. That'll go down in franchise history. Is
that most ever?
I think so. I believe so. Greg, can you double check me on that?
I'll double check, but I think it is.
I believe it's the most for a defensive player, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I don't have that data in front of me. I know that it is. I know it's a landmark start for him. But 202 starts for any defensive lineman, especially just like that. That is in and of itself a great accomplishment. Just because it's not the same as, I know Donnie Shell is up there. It's not the same as a safety or a corner logging that many games. You're talking about a guy who was in the trenches every single snap. I mean, lots of contact, bodies wear down faster, but Cam Hayward is just he's a special guy. And I a few years ago, I was really wondering, anytime anybody would bring up his name into Hall of Fame discussions, I'm kind of like, I don't know.
I used to be the same way. I'm like,
but now I'm kind of like longevity. The numbers,
man, the year goes a long way too.
It really does. Mm-hmm. Greg, go ahead.
So it breaks Donnie Shell's record of most defensive games played with his 202nd appearance.
All right. Wow. So I knew Donnie Shell was up there. So and this is nothing against Donnie Shell. Obviously, Donnie Shell, Hall of Fame safety, undrafted guy who was just in the building last week, and really, really cool that, when the Super Bowl 9 team is in there and Donnie Shell's there, that Beanie Bishop, who's also an undrafted guy wearing number 31, gets 2 interceptions with him in the building. That was kind of cool. Yeah. But for Cam Hayward, man, that's to me, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more impressive just because of the position he plays. But let's get into this matchup.
Real quick, Chris, I really do believe, just on the Cam Hayward front, that 2 years ago was his best year, and I think this year is even better. So I think he's playing the best football of his career. And really, I think there's 3 defensive tackles that stand out above all else this year. That's Chris Jones, Cam, and Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah,
Dexter Lawrence. Okay, that's actually a really, really good segue into this.
Right.
Yeah, Dexter Lawrence might be the most dangerous giant on the field. And when I say giant, I'm not just meaning New York Giant. The man is also a massive human being. Greg, how do I look at Dexter Lawrence in the middle of that Giants defense and see Ryan McCollum at center, and I get a little concerned? What do the Steelers need to do in order to neutralize him?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of go off on a little tangent here first, because Mike Tomlin told us a story earlier this week that I thought was pretty funny. He was talking about how he took Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins out to dinner during their draft year, and they're both sitting on a couch in front of him, and he's like, there's not much room on that couch. It's because these are both very big human beings. And he went on to say that obviously Ryan McCollum had a pretty good game this past week against the Jets in the second career start, but obviously has a pretty big challenge ahead of him this week as well. And it's not like they're going to leave him out there on an island. I mean, to prepare for Dexter Lawrence, you got to prepare to put 4 hands on him to keep him at bay. And this is a Giants defense that leads the league in sacks. They have 31 of them this year. Dexter Lawrence leads the league with 9 sacks. You also got to worry about Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and a couple other guys. I think Jason Pinnock has 2 or 3 sacks from a safety position. So there's guys that can get into the backfield all over this defense, and they have one of the best passing defenses in the league as well. I think they given the 6th best pass defense in the league as well. So just things you need to prepare for, obviously. And the offensive line definitely has a tough task in front of them.
Matt, the Giants offense is pretty pathetic though. I mean, this is good way to put it. They're pretty bad. They're a team that wants to run the ball, yet they are just not good at running the ball. What is the expectation for what the Steelers defense should actually do against the Giants offense?
Yeah, the Giants offense, just to kind of educate people, was in a really difficult situation here. I mean, they gave up a ton of sacks last week, and he's not quite Dexter Lawrence, but Andrew Thomas was one of their absolute most important guys. He's the left tackle that if he were available, it'd be him and Highsmith on an island. I mean, that's exactly what they did with Trey Hendrickson. And then they can help the rest of the line, which isn't awful, but certainly isn't above average even, those other four. But then they go and make their biggest strength, their biggest weakness, and sacks galore, and the passing game gets reduced a great deal, the inability to go downfield. And it's a very condensed passing game anyway. Everything goes to Wan'Dale Robinson and Neighbors. They throw the tight ends like never. The backs are semi-involved, and Jones isn't an elevator at quarterback. So they're kind of forced to run more than they don't run very well either. You know, I mean, like, it's Neighbors is dangerous, but there's not a lot else here to really scare you.
Yeah, it seems like all week, especially whenever it was Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin both really harped on Daniel Jones's running ability. I mean, I don't remember who it was. It might have been Terrell Austin who called him a Josh Allen type. No, I think it was Cam Hayward who called him a Josh Allen type. Now, I understand. I understand like what he's saying. He's not saying he's Josh Allen. He's saying that he's the same type of runner that Josh Allen is. But I'm sorry, I just like the thing. One of the things that makes Josh Allen so difficult is not only his ability to run, but the fact that he's also an elite thrower of the football. That's not the same thing with Daniel Jones. And I get like they need to contain him. They need to be able to make sure that, they do have, some design quarterback runs, and those will be things that the defense sees. But I mean, I definitely have concerns about the way the Steelers offense matches up against the Giants defense. Keeping Russell Wilson upright is still going to be there, still going to be a concern of mine, especially Giants. Like you mentioned, Greg, they're, really good at getting after the quarterback. However, at the same time, I just don't think that the Giants can possibly outscore the Steelers in this game just because their offense is so bad and the Steelers defense. This seems like a game that if they're going to start racking up the sacks, this seems like a game that should happen. And I think TJ might be taking that a little bit personally. So
might be a lot of sacks in this game.
Yeah, and not to like. Actually, I'll put a pin in the thought that I have. It's something I wrote about earlier this week, but I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit. But we'll continue to kind of throw this around. Greg, I'm curious of how do the Steelers avoid going into this as like a. I think a lot of people might think of this as being like, oh, this is a Tomlin game. They're going to
call it a trap game. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I'm not calling it that, but I know that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be kind of concerned that it's going to be that. How do the Steelers avoid that? Did you get that sense at all that this is going to be happening? And see, we already got people who are watching the show live already saying, "Oh, it's a trap game." I'm like,
I mean, I think anytime we walk into a game like this, like that's what comes up. I think the same thing happened 2 weeks ago when we talked about going against the Raiders. I think the same thing happened a little bit earlier this year as well. Like I think anytime we go into a game like this, it comes up. Trap game, Tomlin trap game. It's typical. But I think with the way the offense has been running the ball, I think it sets them up well heading into this week. The Giants have one of the worst rush defenses in the league. I think they're the 8th worst rush defense in the league. They've been letting up around 130 yards per game this season. And with the way Najee has been running the last couple games, I think that bodes well. If you add a big game from Jaylen Warren, it helps. And then if obviously we don't have the full injury report yet, but if Cordarrelle Patterson gets worked back into that mix as well, I mean, that's 3 guys that over the course of a 4-quarter game, they're just going to wear down this Giants defense, and it's going to bode well.
Matt, is there any alarming stats or anything that comes out, whether it's in the Steelers' favor or in the Giants' favor, anything that could kind of give us a good tell of like what the way this game might actually play out? Obviously, the game's going to be played on the field, but there are certain things that like you go into a game knowing that like, okay, this is the way the game should go.
It's funny when people are saying it's a Tomlin game and they mean that in a negative fashion. I was about to say, does that mean he wins at home on Monday night? Dale's been covering this team for a very long time and has never seen. There was one Monday night loss, and that was not scheduled for Monday night. It was COVID. They got switched against Washington. But if it's a scheduled Monday night game, this team's like 30-0 at home. I mean, it's insane DiMaggio-like streak. One thing that really stands out to me, and I think I mentioned it last week, the Jets allowed a full yard on the ground more than they produced in the run game. Mm-hmm. Well, the Giants are 1.5. I mean, they're a yard and a half worse. I was startled by a whole yard difference. This is 50% worse. And they do bottle you up well. Like, you'd be like, why can you run on these guys if they have Dexter Lawrence and this good front? The thing is, once you get past them, it's bad. Yeah. I mean, their tackling's really poor. Their angles are really poor. It's the youngest defense in the league, and it kind of shows, just learning the speed of the game and how to get people on the ground.
And that, like, to your point of what you were saying earlier about the fourth quarter and getting, tired and the way Najee's running, I mean, that's one of the last running backs that I think any defense that's already struggling with tackling would want to play anyway, much less play while you're also tired. And so, I'm glad you brought that up, because I definitely have serious concerns for the Giants over how they're going to try to limit what Najee is averaging 4.6 yards per carry in the second half. I mean, he is, wow. and he has the fourth most rushing yards in the league in the second half. He is, I mean, Derrick Henry light. In the second half right now. You'd love to see more in the first half, of course, but he is absolutely playing lights out in the second half. And I do think that part of it is the Steelers' commitment to just body blow after body blow after body blow. And then whenever the opponent is weakened enough and they can barely breathe, and that's when you go for the knockout. The one thing that I wanted to bring up, and that was the whole kind of thing about, like, hey, TJ doesn't have a lot of sacks. He's still playing at a Defensive Player of the Year level. It doesn't have to be sacks. It's not a Defensive Player of the Year award goes to the sack leader. Otherwise, TJ Watt would have won last year. It does go to an overall great defensive player, and TJ's playing at that level, but the sack numbers are down. I've been getting a feeling that I haven't seen in this team in a long time, that this defense is like, you see them walking around the locker room, you would think that they have the worst defense in the league. They are just they are acting like they are playing terrible football. I'm like, I flat out asked a few of them, like, with the pretense of being like, you guys have the second ranked defense in the league right now. It's not like you guys are playing bad defense. They're like, yeah, but we're leaving so many things out there. They're just nitpicking at themselves. And I think TJ probably looks at his numbers. And this is a presumption on my part. I could be wrong. And TJ may say something about this tomorrow. Like, yeah, that Chris guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But he might look at his sack numbers and be like, screw this. I'm going to go out there and get 3 sacks this week. Because I want my sack numbers to go up, And I think that the reason why I bring that up is, and talk about the feeling that you haven't gotten in a long time about a team, that 2008 Steelers defense, the all-time great defense that we talk about, they were petty like that. They were petty about if they finished second in anything, they were pissed off. They were, and they just, nothing was, if it wasn't first, it wasn't good enough. And that was a defense that finished first across the board, except in run defense, and barely finished in second place. But still, like, that was a defense that absolutely took everything personally. And nitpicked at everything, and we're like, oh, we only got 3 sacks that game. We should have had 4, and it's like, okay, 3 sacks in a game is still great, And so I'm getting a similar sense. I'm not saying that the 2024 defense is going to go down as an all-time great defense. I'm just saying they share a similar chip on their shoulder. They share a similar mentality. And I think that is building a championship mentality on that side of the ball. And I just want to see what you guys think about something like that. Am I way off base here?
I don't think so. And I'm only down to the facility once a week, but I'm with Dale every day who's down there. I talk to you guys, and I've gotten this from many people that 100% what you said, I think, is true from what I've been told. And the opposite, I guess the opposite is true on offense now. Like, I think people on that side of the ball are like, we can put up 30 every week. Like I haven't had this feeling. Like some of the old guys on offense are Najee Harris, and they've never they don't remember Ben when Ben was Ben. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Greg, what do you think? I mean, you're in the locker room with me most days. Like, are you getting a similar feeling from? It could be from the defensive side of the ball, because to Matt's point, I am getting a similar mentality. Like, there's a lot of optimism in that room that they feel like they're better than a 5-2 football team right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw it even at the beginning of the season, before they even played a game, that the standards on the defense side of the ball were going to be super high this year with all the talent they brought in, with Minka getting back to playing that roaming free safety Minka ball type position, with Deshaun Elliott, with Patrick Queen coming in, with the high expectations for Peyton Wilson and Landon Roberts. Like, the expectations have been high, and I think when they're playing as well as they are and they still have a chip on their shoulder like they do, that's only going to lead to good things. And I think it's a good thing that they have that mentality, because it means there's room for improvement. It means they can play better, and I think they realize that, and they know the sky's the limit as the season goes on.
All right, time to make our picks. I think we were split as a staff last week, and so that means that 2 of us lost and 2 of us won. So we'll have to see.
It's the first time I picked against the Steelers was last week.
Yeah, it was the second time I picked against them this year, and I'm 1-1. No, I am wrong both times. Never mind. I picked Atlanta to win in the season opener, and then I picked the Jets to win last week. So don't listen to my predictions. I'll save those for
just
the
pick
end.
Against them again.
Yeah, maybe fans are like, please pick the Giants to win. But Greg, I'll kick it to you first. Who's gonna win? Who's gonna win Monday night?
I got Steelers 27-7, I think is what I submitted earlier today. The Giants are coming off back-to-back performances where they scored 7 points or less. They only scored 3 points this past week against the Eagles. I think that the matchup favors the Steelers in terms of being able to run the ball and kind of lean on their strengths that they've had the last couple weeks with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And we'll see what the offense is capable of with Russ Wilson at the helm again. If they keep him upright, I think it bodes well for throughout the game. And then the defense, obviously, as we've talked about throughout this podcast, the Giants offense isn't anything special. Malik Neighbors might be the only guy that really stands out. So if they can get to Daniel Jones, keep him contained in the pocket, I think it might set up for another win on Monday Night Football.
Matt, who do you got?
I got 23-10, which seems closer than I think the game will go. Like I could see a meaningless Giants touchdown at the end. And my thought process on it is maybe by halftime or so, in a very Tomlin-like fashion, he'll realize this team is really going to have a tough time scoring on us. So we're not throwing in the middle of the field. We're not taking a lot of chances. If we punt, we punt, and the fourth quarter will belong to us. And that might not result in a lot of points, but I think they'll be in control of the game from 45 of the 60 minutes. You know what I mean? Pretty early on.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a little bit more bold on this. I'm going to say that they're going to put up 30 points for the third week in a row. I'm going 31-13 as my final score. I do think this offense is hitting a stride, and I really think that what Russell Wilson showed in the second half last week is the blueprint for what this offense is going to be. Now, they're not going to be able to score a touchdown on every single drive for the rest of the season. Otherwise, they'll be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. But just the way that they went about it, the way that they ran the football, I do think that as the game wears on, as long as the Steelers aren't down at all, or if it's a close game, or if they're only down by 3 points, or if they're barely up or anything like that, if it remains a one-score game one way or the other, that the second half will favor them as it has throughout the season. I think there's only been one time the second half has been absolutely terrible for them. I think that was in Denver. And then just about every other game, they've been great in the second half. And so this seems like a game to me in which they will excel in the second half. So I'm going to say 31-13 final score. And then we have a lot of quelling of optimism to do during the bye week if that happens. Really quick, one bonus prediction, 15 seconds to answer. Are the Steelers going to acquire a wide receiver prior to the deadline? Greg, go.
Yes. I don't know who it's going to be. But I think, obviously we've known all season long that they need to add someone. I think Omar's putting feelers out there. I think they add someone. I just don't know who it is at this point.
Matt, what do you think?
Yes, but I think Cooper Kupp is now off the market, that they should be all in. At best, I'm thinking it's like a Christian Kirk, or you leave Slayton here on Monday night, something like that. And I do think the bye week could be good for Ramon Wilson. Hey, he's been out of sight, out of mind too. So there's maybe a semi-solution in-house.
I am going to say yes as well. I don't feel all the way great about it, but it's not going to be a sexy name. I do think that I'm going to predict that it's Darius Slayton. I'm glad you brought him up. I do think that is the Giants are absolutely going to be in a position to sell. And so I just think that makes the most amount of sense.
Yeah. I think it's a late pick for a guy, not a day two guy,
You'd love to see them get a guy like Cooper Kupp, but the Rams winning Thursday night, I don't see the Rams getting into a situation in which they really want to trade away Cooper Kupp. So I wouldn't hang your hat on it if you're a Steelers fan. So prepare for a Darius Slayton, Schefter bomb, or Mike Williams, or any of those, like Christian Kirk, possibly any of those other guys. I would not look for a big name guy. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the game Monday night. This podcast should be able to carry you throughout, the entire weekend, since they play Monday night instead of Sunday. Again, really appreciate everybody tuning in, listening. We will be back next week. We won't have a game to preview, but we can at least recap the obviously the game against the Giants, and then we can kind of look at some things. What do the Steelers need to do in the second half of the season? How does the second half look now compared to the way it looked prior to the season? That second half of the schedule originally looked like it was going to be absolutely brutal. Now with the Browns being an absolute mess, is it a little bit easier than it looked, previously? Who knows? Either way, we'll get into that next week. Until then, we'll catch you guys on the flippity flip.